Every week, so much happens in your own country that it's hard to keep track of the news at home, let alone around the world. So the Global Summary is our weekly rundown of the biggest news events from around the globe. In the next 8 minutes, I'm going to walk you through some of the biggest news stories, but we'll be moving fast. So if you want to find out more about any of the stories, then there's article recommendations in the description. This week's biggest stories include the surge of COVID cases in India, Ethiopia's rejection of EU assistance with their election, and Bill and Melinda Gates' divorce. Before we start though, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and ring the bell to be notified every time we put out a global news video. And as we're getting incredibly close to 100,000 subscribers on the channel, we'd appreciate your support more than ever. Thank you so much. Let's first turn to India, a country receiving increased international attention, largely due to the huge surge in COVID cases the nation has experienced in the last few days. You've probably seen it before, but take a look at this truly overwhelming graph. If we focus just on the last few days, you can see that the country is experiencing between 300,000 and 400,000 new cases of the virus every single day. That means that every day in India, more people are being infected than have been infected in Greece since the pandemic began. And every week, more people than Mexico's COVID total. So why is this horrific rise in COVID cases happening in India, a country who'd largely coped well with the pandemic up until now? Well, as the graph shows, India had been doing reasonably well coping with the pandemic. In fact, the government had even claimed that they'd beaten the virus. This is one of the main criticisms at the moment. The government declared victory too early, and that people stopped socially distancing and following basic coronavirus rules as a result. Some have also criticised the government's mixed messaging when it comes to the coronavirus. But whatever the reason, India's really not doing well right now. The health system is on the brink of collapse, oxygen supplies are running low, and people are using social media to try and find ICU beds, while bodies are being burned in parks and outdoor spaces due to the lack of capacity in crematoriums. Obviously, our thoughts are with those affected by the coronavirus in India, and we hope to have better news out of the country soon. Let's move to some people trying to work to end the pandemic through their incredibly notable foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates. It was reported on Monday that the famous couple was set to divorce after 27 years of marriage, with the couple remarking on Twitter, "After a great deal of thought and a lot of work on our relationship, we've made the decision to end our marriage." This is obviously sad for the couple, but we wouldn't normally report on a story like this. The reason it's important from a global news perspective today, though, is their foundation, which is truly massive, holding $43 billion worth of net assets in 2019, and spending billions on charitable and public health initiatives, including spending nearly $2 billion on research in COVID and vaccine development. On the foundation, the couple remarked, "We continue to share a belief in the mission and will continue our work together at the foundation, but we no longer believe we can grow together as a couple in the next phase of our lives." The foundation may receive ire from conspiracy theorists, but it objectively does a lot of good work in the world. So let's hope that these efforts are able to continue in saving lives around the world. Next, let's turn to Mexico, and more specifically Mexico City, where late Monday night a metro overpass collapsed, allowing a train travelling on it to fall to the ground, killing 20 people. Obviously, it wasn't just those on the train who were hurt by the collapse, with the overpass crushing at least one car on the busy road below. Firefighters and rescue workers raced to the scene in an attempt to assist those caught up in the horror. But by the time the city's mayor arrived, at least 20 were already dead and 70 injured. While medical professionals work to assist those who are injured and save lives, an investigation will soon be underway to unpack exactly what happened here. The collapse took place on Metro Line 12, the newest line in the network, only actually constructed in 2012. Despite the recency of the line's creation, an earthquake in 2017 supposedly damaged the construction, with local newspapers reporting that not only were people aware of the issues on the now collapsed bridge, but authorities also attempted to repair it. Obviously, our thoughts are with those who are affected by this incident. And we hope that a thorough investigation is able to be conducted to identify what happened, who's responsible, and how similar events can be prevented in the future. Let's stay in Mexico, where the country's president has officially apologized to the Mayan people for historic abuses against them in the 5 centuries of the Spanish conquest, with the president specifically referencing the caste war revolt, where 250,000 people lost their lives. During the remarks, Lopez powerfully commented, "We offer the most sincere apologies to the Mayan people for the terrible abuses committed by individuals and nations and foreign authorities in the conquest, during these 3 centuries of colonial domination and 2 centuries of an independent Mexico." Lopez has long been an advocate for indigenous rights, so his personal apology isn't all that shocking. What makes it more remarkable is that it's now coming from his office, the office of the president. For years, Mayans have been seeking official recognition and an apology for the atrocities, something they now have. However, this might not be as pure as it first seems, because with elections only a month away, some wonder if this is opportunistic timing from the president. Regardless, it'll be interesting to see whether other world leaders follow this example when it comes to addressing historic atrocities. Next up, let's talk about Ethiopia, a country we actually discuss quite a lot of times on this channel. If you didn't already know, Ethiopia is currently in the grips of both political insecurity and a terrifying civil war. I'll link the latest video explaining the topic below. Anyway, the country is also set to go to the polls at the beginning of next month to elect new parliamentarians. In an effort to improve the election's integrity and stabilise the country's political situation, the EU plan to send observers to the country to monitor and verify the elections, something that's pretty common in developing nations. Anyway, it was announced in the last few days that the EU has been forced to pull out due to Ethiopia's government being non-compliant with the EU's terms, with the EU's High Representative remarking that the EU's independence and communications systems had been denied. In an official statement, he said that it was disappointing the EU had not received the assurances necessary to extend to the Ethiopian people one of the most visible signs of support for their quest for democracy. Despite being forced to withdraw from the process, the EU has still given the country's election board €20 million in funding to support the election, as well as urging the country to still conduct free and fair elections. Ultimately, we'll have to keep an eye on the situation to see how it plays out in the days ahead. Finally, let's take a look at the US, where President Biden has made changes to the country's refugee policy. Since coming into office, Biden has opted to keep Trump's cap on refugees in place, capping the total number of refugees able to enter the country each year at 15,000. Biden's decision to maintain the Trump cap was controversial with progressives and refugee agencies alike, who insist that the number should be increased. In response, Biden has increased the cap to 62,500, before remarking that the old limit on refugees did not reflect America's values, continuing to say that his administration had to undo the damage of the previous one. Despite this, the figure still remains lower than under Obama, with many hoping to see the number raised yet further in the years ahead. There's obviously also been blowback from the move, with some accusing Biden of being too lax on the border issue, one of the few areas where the new president is polling poorly. So those were some of the biggest global news stories from the last week, and if 8 minutes wasn't enough for you, then there's further reading in the description. If you think we missed anything, comment below to tell us the stories you'd like to see us cover in future episodes. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that's in the description.